this is a bit how perspective shifts work. You know, when you go and see a film and it truly takes you to a place in your mind, you feel like your whole reality's changed after the film, and you think, oh, I've really got to remember that. That's like influenced my whole life, right? And it feels like there's been a real shift right then and there in that film. Or you have a dream and you wake up in the morning and you think, oh, I must remember exactly how that dream has really just changed my mind, my perspective. Something in that has really changed my outlook on life. Now, that can come about from anything. Maybe it's your first time rock climbing. You go to a climbing wall and you have some headphones in and you play a song that or some piece of music that you haven't heard before, and it gets in there emotionally, plus the climbing, and you think, in that moment, this is all I want to do. This is the happiness or whatever, right? It can be any experience. Traveling, seeing a new city, eating a new food, and a perspective shifts, right? But then our mind goes back to other perspectives and so on. So we sort of glide in and we glide out. And that's what OCD recovery is like, because as you are having these perspective shifts along the way, you glide in and glide out. And if you had a piece of metal and it was horizontal like a knife, and I bent it down so that the knife was now permanently bent down, if I wanted to bend it back to the horizontal, I wouldn't have to pull the knife back to the horizontal. I'd have to pull it past the horizontal in the other direction so it springs back into the horizontal, right? Now that's a bit like your mind and the perspective shifts that are going to go on in your mind to get to a position of OCD recovery, to get to a position of baseline default inner peace restored once again with no chronic guilt and anxiety there. Now, that will mean gliding and gliding into new perspectives, naturally gliding out of many of them, and then over time, like the piece of metal, over and over and over, your mind then settles back into the horizontal. But that will come about through lots of perspectives that you don't even know how they're going to influence you, but you can be guided in the right direction. But it changes because of how OCD is latched for all of us in different ways. All the perspective shifts I had to get me to rid of chronic guilt and anxiety was all different because of major themes in my journey, like sensory motor, existential, harm, OCD. And for other people, it's different, and they have different beliefs about life and different problems and different avoidance compulsions and so on. But it all runs in a similar stream. And it's very important to be aware of how those perspective shifts will occur. Otherwise, you can try and force it. Can you force? Say, for example, I said, we're going to watch a movie. A movie like, let's say, Lord of the Rings, because if you've never seen Lord of the Rings before, and anybody who watches it most times thinks, gosh, this is a really sort of very different film to what I often see, and because of the huge battle scenes and how they're created and the feelings that all carries in your mind and how you visualize that, it takes you to a place in your mind that you haven't seen before. The same as if you saw the Titanic for the first time and you're watching that, all the visuals and the ending when the boat's going down, how that is, you can have an idea of what the film will be about, but until you see it, it's very different. The same as riding a bike and all those kind of things. You can't, until you've experienced it, you don't know. So perspective shifts, they will occur in ways that you won't know. The same as you don't know how you're going to feel in a certain film. You don't know how you're going to feel in certain life events. You can have an idea of what it feels like to be married and to be looking into your partner's eyes. You can have a feeling of what it feels like to look down at a coffin with one of your relatives in that you care very much about. But you can't actually feel it and experience it until you've had that happen yourself. And that's very much like the OCD recovery journey. So be open to perspective shifts and expect that you do not know how those are going to play out in your mind. And then gently fade those sort of onion layers of an onion coming off bit by bit by bit in the layers of resistance layers of that chronic anxiety and guilt, internal on guard state, fading down and down.